spotlight on the women creating an impact, leading organizations, and mission-focused strategic programs across the federal technology and consulting community. This is Impact. Okay, I'm being joined today by Phedra Arthur Iruke, the Chief of Delivery Operations at eSimplicity. Phedra, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Of course.
First, tell me what it is you do over there at eSimplicity.
Sure. So I'll give you a quick spiel about our company. So we are a women-owned, mission-driven company. We're founded by Vietnamese immigrants, and they kind of realized their American dream through resilience and innovation. So they create this company in 2016. We are a proud member of the Digital Service Coalition. But what we do essentially is we focus on data-driven solutions for our government partners. We do anything from platform modernization. We have engineering solutions, but we have a strong foundation in service delivery, user experience, strong engineering practices, and we want to make sure that we work on things that are very highly impactful to American citizens. So in my role as Chief of Delivery Operations, I oversee today engineering, product management, agile services agile delivery and human-centered design. And it's my job to ensure that we're approaching every contract with the best practices. We help a lot with foundational contract startups. And then we also help make sure that we maintain a high service of level of quality throughout the engagement with our customers.
Yeah, and project management and all that is not an easy lift. That is
certainly not.
A lot to do there. So tell me, what key moments in your journey have taught you the most valuable lessons about leadership, and how have those lessons shaped your approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, it starts from childhood. I grew up with a single mom and a single grandmother and kind of seeing them do it all. But then our family would come together and we would figure out how to make $1 out of 15 cents. And so from a very early time, I realized it takes a village, regardless of the circumstances. And that's something that I've brought to me every day in my work and my life. I always have a community of people around me and a team to help me go the distance. So that's probably the first one here. You need a community, you need a team. Another thought comes to mind about being resourceful. Having great ideas is wonderful. Being the smartest person in the room is great. But when's the last time you really added value to someone's life? And I've found that as I've navigated my personal journey, being able to help others achieve their goals has paid me more dividends than being smart or being capable at something. And then I think the third one I'll just mention here is really seeing people for who they are, especially those of us from non-traditional backgrounds without the formal training, recognizing the grit, the instincts, reaching out, kind of pouring into them. I had a situation that happened to me in college, and it stays with me to this day. I was presenting summer research that I had done at Bethune-Cookman University at the time, where I set up parallel computing. Was kind of a tech person back in my early days. And a gentleman from Stanford approached me and was like, I came to find you. I want to hear all about what you did. And then proceeded to invite me to come out and do summer research at Stanford. But at that point in my life, I was so challenged financially, like I was having challenges meeting my rent. I put myself through college. So, trying to pay rent, trying to go through a very rigorous program at that time, University of Central Florida. I couldn't even imagine why someone from Stanford wanted to talk to me, work with me, and all that kind of stuff, right? But it stayed with me that even despite the circumstances around me, he saw me. He saw something in me that made him reach out and decided to give me a shot. And so I really approach every opportunity. Like when I meet people, whether they're new employees or current employees or even people in my ecosystem, who are the people who are really standing out to me and really trying to make an effort to pour into those people? So I say those are the three.
And I, like you, put myself through college, and I think things like that help build you up as a person that you don't rely on other people for everything. I mean, the importance of having a team, but how to also dig in and do the hard work too, because you're not afraid to.
Right.
Yep. So can you share a specific challenge you faced that ultimately became a turning point in your career, and what insights did you gain from that experience?
Yeah, I have to be honest. It was my very first tour in government contracting. So here I am. I was coming off a 3-year consulting gig, and it was very cushy, very flexible. And I had recently moved to Laurel, Maryland, and I was kind of trying to figure out what do I get into next. And came across GovCon as an industry, and there was a company at the time, it was called Aquilent, and they held a contract with the Office of Communications at CMS. Um, they were a critical part of bringing in the tech surge that helped relaunch healthcare.gov. This is back in 2015,
Okay.
right? And they were looking for project managers and program managers to come in and kind of help oversee some of that work. And so I raised my hand, was like, had no idea what I was walking into. I was like, I can do this. So here I am, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and very young, still single, all that good stuff. And I'm like, what is this? And one of the biggest challenges in that environment was we had a very traditional GovCon, world, an agency of way of working. And during that time, that administration had stood up the United States Digital Services, and they were bringing in these engineers from like Google, Amazon, all these top tier tech companies at a time when they were cutting edge. So we're not talking about, like Google today. We're talking about
Right.
Google before they had organized the world's information, right? And these guys come in with their jeans and they're like, we're not doing that. And I was like, this is kind of a nightmare. So I actually started that program, not necessarily saying, here's the project plan and da da da. It was like, let's all figure out how we're going to play together, right? And it was very much a bridging of two cultures. And by the end of it, we were celebrating. So it was great. But we were also doing things that were very cutting edge for government at the time. So before we had all these buzzwords around agile development and product management and APIs and DevOps and going to the cloud, right? Government wasn't doing things that way. And so I also, even though I major in technology, I was an IT major, I also realized I'm a bit out of my comfort zone here. And so becoming a student once again and sitting with these engineers and very smart people and saying, can you tell me a little bit how we would do this and what's the value, right? And so I could actually help them explain it to the government partners. I read so many books. I went to so many talks just trying to learn and figure out all this good stuff. And again, in the end, it rolled off. We relaunched the streamlined application. So at that time it was called App 2.0. Enrolled millions of families in healthcare. We also did very cool things like we had a 1 billion user load test with the
Wow.
login service. And I go back to that experience a lot in my career. And not that it was easy. Like I remember I was working 90-hour weeks, but when you have someone like the administrator of CMS popping into your calls, at the time it was Andy Slavitt, and you're just kind of like, okay, I got to make sure we do this right, right? Like it had a lot of visibility. In the end, it was a win-win-win, right? Everybody won. But in terms of what did I gain from that experience, I would say be willing to try new things, right? Like I think that was a big part of it. Like just be willing to say, I know nothing about GovCon, but I'm gonna jump in both feet and like figure this out. That has helped me so much on my career because now I'm not afraid of things I'm not familiar with. Always be learning, right? Technology, especially now. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, it's changing so fast, whether it's reference architectures or, the ability to build and deploy apps using AI, but even culturally, how we work together, all that changes so much
Hmm.
over time. So just always be learning, always be trying to figure out like what works here. And I would say lastly, like Cheryl says, lean in, you know, when
Hmm.
we have these opportunities, especially the opportunities to be at the table, maybe in some worlds creating the table, lean in and figure out that or understand that in government, most of us are working on things that impact millions of hardworking Americans and really just kind of going back to that every time so that you can continue to have that motivation, even when when things are tough, even when you don't even know, not really clear what you're doing, that will help motivate you kind of see it through having that resilience.
And having just met you, I'm feeling that you're someone that thrives in a challenging situation.
Right. You know what? That is true. Life definitely has not been easy. I'm also currently a mom of two bouncing toddler boys right now.
Ooh,
And so my schedule is always,
yeah.
it's, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I think one of my qualities is that I face challenges with a lot of understanding, compassion, empathy, and I really enter into those situations with the mindset of like helping people kind of navigate it. Um, Life is hard, you know.
Yeah.
We all have to work. Well, some of us are independently wealthy. Good for y'all, but most of us have to work. And so for those of us who have to work and we spend so many hours at our offices per week, for everyone who works with me, I want it to feel like a pleasure and not a chore. So I really try to make sure that I'm approaching everything with that mindset of like, what's someone's experience? How are they experiencing me? How can I help them navigate this challenge more easily?
Okay, so now how do you stay connected to your purpose as a leader, and how can other women find and maintain their sense of purpose in their careers?
I'll tell you what, starting with the first part of that question, I think I always revisit my core values and beliefs. I'm a person who has a lot of faith. And if you don't carve out that time to revisit like who you are and what you stand for on a regular basis, life will kind of end up happening to you versus you feeling like you're navigating, the web that we're going through. So some of the things that I did personally to help me figure out what I stood for is I actually took the time and wrote out, my principles. What is it that I believe in? I take the time and I journal, and then I try to take the time every week to revisit myself and just say, self, hey Phedra, hey girl, how you doing? Or, do we feel good about where we are in life? What could we be doing differently if we're not feeling good? So an example of that was when I was revisiting, actually preparing for this interview, I looked at some of the things I had written down and saw that I was saying that I prioritize like work and life balance and self-care, but I was like, maybe it's time for me to recommit to Caroline Gervin and her Iron series on YouTube, right? Like, because life gets busy. And so you have to just have a way to check in with yourself and make sure that you are not kind of moving with the wind. Another thing is, when you're faced with things in life that impact your moral compass, it's really important to stay firm and stand up for what you believe in. And I'm not saying you got to do a think piece on social media, right? It doesn't always have to be very loud or anything like that. Sometimes it's as simple as withdrawing support. Sometimes it's partnering with another cause that resonates with your spirit, right? But just making sure that you're not just going with the wind and what feels popular at the time. If you are fully grounded in what you are and your beliefs, like stand up for yourself, stand up for those things and make sure that every time someone thinks of you, they're like, I know exactly what she stands for. I think that could go a long way, both in your personal life and in your career.
I totally agree with that. So now, what actionable steps can women take to support one another in leadership? And have you seen this solidarity create meaningful change in your own journey?
Absolutely. I would not be here if it had not been for other women and other people too. Like it's not always just women, but I would just say, one thing I've done recently is I've been opening myself up to mentor others. I have a mentor. If it wasn't for, he's a gentleman, but before him, it was actually someone that a CIO at Exelon, pouring into me. And really, again, she saw me, she saw that instinct, she saw that I had something going on. And so she was like, hey, you want to meet once a month, 30 minutes? I'm happy to. And I was, sure. I had no idea what that meant, but I was just like, yes, right. And she was the first person who said to me, why aren't you running your own org? And it had never occurred to me that I could even run an org. I was like, because I didn't think I could do that. Right?
Yeah.
And so she was like, yeah, let's talk about how to get you there. Right. So I think about that often, and I now have mentees, right? So I'm trying to do that same thing and kind of, pay it forward. Another thing that's really important is how we use our words and how we talk about each other. I really try to encourage and build people up. Even when I have constructive feedback to give, even sometimes you're just like in a mood and you just kind of want to complain about things, right? I try to pause and really think through, how can I amplify this person? How can I say something to them where they will leave this conversation feeling better than when they entered it. That goes so far for people. It's just making sure people feel good when they're interacting with you. Creating safe space for candid conversations though. You know, we, whether you want to have a wind down or if you want to do like a girls thing, but, whether in personal life or at work, you need to create those safe spaces because we cannot move forward if we're not being honest about what's going on and what we can be doing better. And then lastly, just being a sponsor. Share resources. In some cases, it's sharing jobs, you know, like, hey girl, I saw this opportunity, thought of you. Sharing cool companies. Hey, I know you really have a love for AI. Have you seen that Anthropic is doing this really cool thing? Is there a way that you can support it? Right. Opening your network as well, you know, sharing resources. It can be a variety of things, but really just being able to put people on to like opportunities they probably would either not come across themselves or think of themselves in some cases. And so those are kind of the four things that I'm thinking of in real time now, but I'm sure there's others. And that definitely all these things were given to me and pay it forward.
Mm-hmm. I especially agree with you on lifting each other up and supporting one another. It does seem like as much as we try, it just seems like if you go onto social media or anything like that, people are always tearing each other down when we really should just be lifting each other up. And it's so sad to see sometimes.
Exactly. I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly.
Well, Phedra, is there anything else you would like to add?
Oh my. I think one thing I will say is and I just feel compelled to just mention this, you know, at a time where I think people have a lot of fear, I think we have to go back to who we are and seeing each other, coming together and figuring it out, right? I think a lot about life is dealing with what's the saying, that the cards, the hands of cards that you've been dealt,
Yeah.
the cards you've been dealt. And when I was growing up, I played spades quite a bit, still play every now and then, but spades was like a really big card game. And part of that game is, you would get your hand and you would kind of take a look at that hand. And then you and your partner would try to figure out ahead of playing, how many books did you think you could win? And I think that lesson has applied to a lot of my life, right? Because sometimes your hand is terrible and you're just like, how can I even get bored off this? I don't even know if I have a book here I can claim. But it forces you to think about what you can do, right? And so I think a lot of those lessons in life is like, focus on what you can do to improve your life and to improve the lives of others. And if we can all take that point of view as a collective, we all kind of move forward.
And I play poker. I played spades, but I play poker too. And sometimes you got to bluff a little bit and then you'll get pinned too. So that doesn't hurt either.
Right. I actually have been wanting to learn how to play poker for a long time and just have not found the space, but not together. You can teach me some things.
Well, Phedra, this has been fun. Thank you so much for hopping on and speaking with us today.
Thank you too. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you're keeping up to date on the latest episodes, and learn more at govforum.io.